The only problem was we forgot about the long-term maintenance and the debt and the distraction, the loss of money when your CTO rewrites an app for 3 months. It was such a dumb decision. It was new and it was exciting and we could do it easily and there was no hypothesis, like the whole template of how to make product decisions was put aside. It was a very emotional decision.
What is really hard is to detect misalignment.
One thing that is very hard to replace with AI is something like stakeholder management.
Oh my God, oh my God, Dios mío, oh my God, oh my God, Dios mío.
Welcome back to Hotfix. Our guest today is Malte Scholz. Malte is CPO and co-founder of airfocus, a tool that helps modern product management teams to organize their work. In this episode, we will talk about common mistakes in product operations. We'll talk about his failure story, which was building a mobile app, the role of AI in product management, and we also had a very good conversation about stakeholder management in general. Welcome to the show, Malte.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Malte. Looking at what you have been building with airfocus in the last couple of years, a burning question from my side is, when you started airfocus, there were already a couple of players trying to optimize product operations. Why did you decide to actually still found airfocus and solve this problem?
That's a great question. I would actually say because I couldn't find a tool that did the job that I wanted a tool to do. So I was in a situation where I was battling spreadsheets and PowerPoints and workarounds on top of Jira in like a, let's say, messy product organization. And I literally tried all the tools that were out there and they were all not working. They were either crazy shitty UX or they were too small plugins or they were called AHA, which is a great company, but not a great product from my sense. And that led me to kind of build the first version of airfocus because there was nothing there. So I think this answers the question a little bit. And even today, it's quite interesting. Many people say, it's a crowded market, but it's, from my view, it's actually not there. Like 3, 4, maybe 5 companies that really do this end to end. And if you compare this with project management software, for example, there are like 100 serious players. Yeah, so it's lonely in product management software country.
And why do you think you can do it better? So what makes you different, right? Like, why can you solve this problem so much better than those other players that were already there that apparently failed if you think they didn't solve it well?
Yeah. So you have to differentiate a little bit between these different players. There are, of course, these issue tracker companies like Jira. They're great for delivery and when you know what the solution is and it's clear what needs to be delivered. That's why 99% of companies use it. And then there are like general purpose tools like Trello, Notion, Asana, project management tools. Not more to be said here. They're not made for product management. And if you look at the real world, still today, 90% of product organizations, they use Jira and then PowerPoint and spreadsheets. That's simply the reality. So, and what we built in the beginning was a little prioritization tool. Then we added road mapping on top. And then we essentially made 2 big decisions right with our first VC round. We said, okay, these 2 use cases, it's not enough. And we said, we want to build a home for product teams, like a single source of record. And then secondly, we said, okay, we want to do it much differently than the existing players, namely AHA and Product, which are good software products, but they're very rigid and opinionated. And this leads to like the conversation, what is better, rigid or opinionated or flexible, yeah. And we are just like heavily on the fence of give people a toolbox and let them play with this toolbox for many, many reasons. Also because we love Notion and Airtable and all these products. But that was primarily a decision based on emotions and our own, like what we like. And then what we learned over the years is that messy product organizations, which we serve today, they cannot live without something that's flexible. And because they have like all these diverse teams and complex product portfolios and each team works differently. And the biggest single issue they all have is alignment between all these teams and running in the same direction and following a shared strategy. That requires flexible tooling. And then also the fact that everything you decide today will change in 6 months anyways. And that's why opinionated, rigid, off-the-shelf software doesn't work for this use case.
And maybe I just wanted to say that I couldn't agree more with that, right? I think the product I was the most successful with, like running my product teams, was Notion by far. And it's the most open there is. And I've never, like, I've always come to the point where it's like, they give me a framework that I have to work in and it doesn't fit me and then it breaks. And then I'm like, now I added a tool to my like workflow and I have to work around this tool all the time. And it doesn't support me in doing product as I would want to do product, right? And maybe, these very rigid frameworks just don't work for most companies.
But Notion is great and we also love it, but it breaks for like big scale product management at some point, because it lacks these modules for product teams. For example, like the biggest, most notable use cases like feedback and insights management. You can always find some hack with Notion, but that breaks at some point for sure.
For sure does.
And Malte, we actually both met through a prospect research call that you made. And also everyone that I connect with on LinkedIn has a shared connection, and that is always you. I think you have an incredible network all over Europe, and I think you talk to a lot of people from the product space. Is there some common mistake that you're continuously seeing in the conversations that you have?
With product people?
A common mistake in product operations, how product teams are being operated.
Yeah. So I'm a bit biased here, but the biggest mistake is not to have a dedicated tool. To me, it's crazy that even HR has a tool. Everyone has a single source of record, but product people for some reason are 10 years behind. So that is like on a meta level, the biggest problem. And then if you put that aside, what I see across so many conversations I have is that there's no structured way of managing user or even like any types of feedback. It doesn't have to be user feedback. It can be like stakeholder feedback or G2 votes, whatever. And you can do that. You cannot look at it and not manage it, but then like don't expect to build something for the customer. I think that is still the biggest problem. And also the one with the biggest leverage, right? If you tackle it, and there are easy ways to tackle it, just start tomorrow, Just put them all in some repository. And it can be a Notion database in the beginning or even a spreadsheet, but just get into this habit of looking at this repository of new feedback.
Amazing. Makes sense. Let's get to our main section of the podcast, which is our failure story. I would just hand over to you and let you talk about it.
Yeah. So there are so many failure stories, but the one I like to pull out of my pocket the most is when we decided some years ago to build a mobile app. This was not a customer-centric or business-centric decision. It was just a decision based on, it's possible. There's React Native and everything we do is already in React. And there was this developer that said, hey, I can build that for $1,000. And we just became all very interested in this idea of having an airfocus mobile app where on the go you can create items or ideas or even comment on a product opportunity. The promise of a $1,000 app also came true. The only problem was we forgot about the long-term maintenance and the debt and the distraction. Like for some reason, then our CTO was not so happy after a month when the thing was live with the app, became a bit obsessed with the topic and decided to completely rewrite it, which then took him like 3 months. And you don't want to calculate the loss of money when your CTO rewrites an app for 3 months. Let's not go there. It was such a dumb decision. And then for some reason, it also took us a super long time to realize how off we were and that we should have killed this thing right when the first version was out. We should have never released it. And this was a great learning curve. Whenever someone brings up an idea that is a bit crazy, we say, great, we love crazy ideas, but this is like the mobile app territory. And this learning has taught us a lot.
And one question I have there, because now I've been doing product in 4 companies, and can we build a mobile app is something that I've heard in every single one of those companies again and again and again. We always decided against it. It always were like B2B companies. We always said, no, this may be not a great idea. So back then, what made you really want to build this? Like, what did you think could happen if you have this mobile app? What was like the big promise, the big hypothesis that this mobile app could have brought you? Nothing. It's just, it would be great to have one.
Like we're all like tech nerds, and we wanted this product to exist, and it was new and it was exciting, and we could do it easily, and there was no hypothesis. Like the whole template of how to make product decisions was put aside. It was a very emotional decision.
I think that is very common, that you leave aside the hypothesis when you think the investment is cheap.
Yeah.
And
or you change the hypothesis to make it work.
This is actually something very funny that you're saying, right? I think in my past definitely done this, where I've built like a product requirement stock, and then halfway through I realized my hypothesis doesn't fit anymore. Maybe I should change the hypothesis to actually fit what we are building now. And then this whole exercise was kind of ridiculous, no?
Yes.
But did users use it?
A handful.
Did you try to mirror the full functionality, or did you limit it to a couple?
It was super limited. And that was already like, I think maybe a smart thing in that project. We never meant to build like a full version. Mm-hmm. But still, even a lean version can be a crazy distraction, because then every product decision you have to think about the mobile app. Okay, is this like something that goes into the mobile app? What does it mean? Crazy. Yeah.
And one question
we had a few more of these projects, yeah. Chrome extension, how to build a Slack bot. Everyone wanted to build a Slack bot. Let's build a Slack bot. Yeah.
And
how often do you use a Slack bot?
No, never, right? But the theme is, it seems like it's always connected to building something outside of your product. Would you agree? Or is there things like Chrome extension, mobile app, something that isn't in your product that was actually a huge success and brought you a lot of business or leads or something that was not within your product?
That's a great question. Well, I would consider some of our integrations to be literal lead gen tools, despite the functionality. Yeah? For the early years, we got like 30% of our leads just from the Atlassian marketplace through Jira plugins for free. I think that was a great Kickstarter in the early days. That doesn't mean like all of this doesn't. I mean, I think there's some real truth to what you just said. But we also made these decisions, these mistakes for internal capabilities and features.
And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But I think and I especially ask this because I think I have the feeling that now, like almost every company wants to build like an AI agent, like a ChatGPT plugin, like an agent for doing this and an agent for doing that. Isn't that the same thing as all of us trying to build apps in 2017? And now we realize that we don't have any of those apps installed on our phones. It's just not how we operate. Do you believe that there could be a similarity? Are you currently building a ChatGPT agent that you are regretting in a couple of years?
It's very possible, but I'm really bullish on building AI capabilities powered by these LLMs into your products. Just because from a user perspective and a hypothesis perspective, it in many cases can make a ton of sense. For example, think about user feedback. So we just said 5 minutes ago, many product managers don't look at and manage feedback. And very often they don't do it because it's very time consuming. If you're serious about it, you can spend a full day per week just like going through it, understanding it, connecting it, managing it, closing the feedback loop, all of that stuff. And AI can be a great help. Imagine like a summary or like suggested insights to your product opportunities based on AI, and you just like have to check a few boxes to accept and validate. But I think there are real use cases for AI. So I think I'm a bit on the other side.
I also agree with that. I think it's very hard to make sense of B2B PM data. The root cause for this is the multimodality of it. There's text-based insights from win-loss analysis or from churn reports. Then there's videos from UX research. Then there's email chains from support tickets. Collecting all of that in one place is already a challenge. And I think that's something where a lot of companies struggle with. And making sense of that is a whole other beast. So I think AI or LLMs might be great at actually making sense of the data.
And maybe to clarify a little bit more what I meant, because I didn't necessarily mean building AI into your product, because obviously it's a technology that can help. What I rather mean is like if you open up ChatGPT today, you can use apps within ChatGPT, those like agents. And I think this is very similar to apps a couple of years ago, where people just think there is this marketplace and the internet will just be within ChatGPT, and then we will use all those apps in ChatGPT, and that's all we do all day long. And I think this is a sunk cost for most companies. And I've seen like big brands, like huge brands, HubSpot, whoever, like building those agents that no one uses, I would say, because I haven't met anyone that goes into ChatGPT's marketplace, browses it, and then uses a custom HubSpot chatbot where they still have to enter their own prompts to get answers, right? It just seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I also don't use them, but it's also early days. But I fully agree. And also, I'm quite skeptical of many application-based startups that just sit on top of it for these single use cases. I think in some cases they can really make sense. So if you go back to, let's say, the CRM example, I think there is going to be someone who builds up an AI-powered CRM from scratch and will at some point like disrupt HubSpot or so. I think that's totally how it's going to happen. But who and what type of approach will survive, no idea. I think a lot of these application-based startups will fail, and probably not just 10%, but like 99%. Yeah.
And I think one question I have to this, because if you're bullish on AI, I think one burning debate Christoph and I like started a couple of days ago was this, like, we more and more of like the PM's responsibility can be made simpler with AI, automated with AI. It's the same for like designers, engineers. And I would be very interested on your take. So we had this debate, who will be replaced last? So who will be left in a team and who will just run the whole show with just a bunch of AI tools helping them? What's your take and how you think about this? Is it the PM that just does coding and design with AI? Or is it a designer that does PM work and coding with AI? Or is it an engineer that does PM work and design work with AI? Or do we still need all of them in 10 years?
Yeah, so I'm a bit on the fence between the engineer and the PM, but I'm very certain that the designer will be replaced first. If I had to pick, I would say the product manager is going to stand last. If these code agents become so strong that you cannot just build these use cases, but you can also maintain them with natural language and a bit of system thinking. So product managers that have an end-to-end skill set, a full stack skill set, meaning they have business understanding, and I see more and more people develop that, as well as a system thinking engineering mindset. They should stand last. I don't know. How do you see it?
I think for me, what I believe is that both designing and engineering is becoming much simpler very quickly. And I believe what makes this job so interesting is that it has a high salary because you need very specialty knowledge. And I think if ChatGPT helps me remove this very special knowledge on this, or going very deep into technology, I think we will get a lot of labor for engineers. I think it will be just, and I think it's same for design. If design becomes simple, and I see it for myself, right? When I started to create LinkedIn content at the beginning of the year, suddenly there's tools like Canva, and I'm not a designer. I'm so far from a designer. And I was always, I said, it's so hard for me to design or create appealing things. And then suddenly it was so simple for me to create what I would say objectively appealing things. So it's just getting so much simpler. And I think product is just, there is not as many hard skills. And even though this sounds like it's an easy job, but it isn't, right? There's just many like soft skills that you need to master to a very, very high degree. Understanding users, being empathetic to users, understanding what people are actually having, like what problems they're actually having and not just what they're saying. It's not so simple to replace, I would say. So I think all those like super specialty jobs will just be a lot simpler to do. So there will be more people. And so I would also agree that the PM will we will have a very easy time finding people to do very small things like designing, engineering, or the PM can actually do it by themselves at one point.
I had a conversation today with someone who was a product manager, and they said it's actually very easy to transfer knowledge from one company to another because it seems that product management challenges are more similar than it seems between these different companies. And one challenge that applies to almost every company is stakeholder management. This is apparently the hardest part that a product manager has to master, and that seems very hard to replace.
Absolutely.
But like one thing that I don't want to agree with is that the PM's job mostly is babysitting stakeholders. And I say it very like over the top, right? Like I just don't think this should be the case, right? I think that I believe we pay PMs a bit too much money for them to just babysit a couple of other people in the company and, I don't know, manage stakeholders. I think it's just a very fuzzy thing. What is this actually? What is stakeholder management? What are you doing when you are managing stakeholders, and why can't you replace that? Do you maybe want to go into this a bit, Christoph? Like, when you say stakeholder management, what do you actually mean? What is this person doing? Is it just, I don't know, answering Slack messages and making sure everyone feels nice about the things that we're building, or what is it?
So there's this big buzzword, which is alignment. And that always is like, it sounds very easy. You talk to one person and then you talk to another person to steer them both in the same direction. But what in my experience is really hard is to detect misalignment. That somebody wants or moves into a different direction than someone else. And very often you need to talk to busy people. You cannot talk to them too often. You have to build relationships to also detect these misalignments. And then it's also your job to somehow remove these misalignments. And that's sometimes very hard. Because also the people themselves, they're very often not aware that they have they have an opinion on something, and that this opinion might be different to someone else in the company.
And
Great point.
Malte, if you look at, like, for example, when you're building airfocus, right? Is this something that you would see as well? That, like, is this something that you try to solve mainly as the PM's job to manage information and distribute it to others, or is there other core things that you see as well? Because I think it's so interesting from your point of view, because I think for you it is maybe very simple to actually detect what are PMs really doing each and every day, right? Because you have countless users that are spending time within your product, and you can actually see maybe with data, what are PMs doing all day? What is their job, and can we replace it?
It's a tough question because they're all using airfocus in completely different ways because of the flexibility. We have customers that just have like timeline views and just move some items around on a timeline. And then we have customers on the complete opposite end that really have built an end-to-end system with self-serve communication and alignment across the whole organization. So the stakeholder babysitting is completely removed because the stakeholders know where to find information and how to engage in an async fashion with the product people and the product ideas. So it's really hard to give a very clear answer here. Companies are still struggling to connect customer feedback with product work. That is for sure.
Maybe one thought then, because I think what Christoph just said is that the one thing that is very hard to replace with AI is something like stakeholder management. What you just said is that a company using airfocus can completely remove babysitting stakeholders. So could there then be a way to actually replace PMs? Do we need us in like 10 years from now? If we can use tools, if a team, let's say there's a team of an engineer and a designer together, and they have a tool like airfocus, and they use it to manage their stakeholders. They use it to communicate what they will be building in the next couple of months. Do we still need a PM if they use this well?
What I said is only possible when configured correctly by a very smart PM. And then I would say this is the bare minimum of stakeholder alignment. And there's like so much more you can do in order to get more of the right stuff done. So I think it's what I'm seeing is like still far away from a desired end state. I think building software is still way too slow and opinionated and not data driven, not customer centric. Think about it like this. If you wanted to write a great email or a great LinkedIn post 2 years ago, you would spend like an hour or so. Yeah. Really fine tuning the email. Today, this email is like 5 minutes because you just prompt your idea and then the email almost writes itself. And in this type of acceleration is yet to be seen in software development and product management.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing you said there is where my opinion is it's the hardest to replace is actually building the right things. This is what you said, right? I think because now in my situation, for example, as a VP of product, like I think most things that I do is getting Slack messages from like all types of C-level, like our COO or like our sales side. They all send me things about we should really build this thing and we should really build this thing. And if we do this, we will make billions, right? And I think it's my job and my team's job to understand which of these things are actually valuable, which of these things do customers actually need, which of these things actually make us money, and testing this and designing experiments to actually build this, and so on and so forth, right? And I think this is so much harder to replace, because if we just replace it with teams that just build stuff, I think there's a lot of companies that just build a ton of crap.
Yeah. And you would probably agree that you not get enough time to spend on making progress on building the right things. You need more time. And the whole idea is to win back time for you and your team.
Yeah, I think that's great. So de-risking in general, an idea is one of the product managers' main tasks. And this is also where they should probably spend their most time in. And at the moment, this is definitely not the case.
Yes. And de-risking all the existing ideas, but also like having time to think about the future, what's going to happen in 5 years. Nobody does this.
Mm-hmm. Or also just asking the question, should we spend time on initiatives that, for example, materialize in revenue in 6 months, or should we build things that materialize in revenue in 2 years or 3 years, but have a higher upside, right? I think these are probably the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And maybe AI can help us to win so much time that we can spend 8 hours a day on these questions, right? And then build things and build companies that make much more money, much more efficiently, right? Interesting.
Yes.
So is there a case for a designer or an engineer being alone and doing these things well, because their tasks, like that they are doing, the operational tasks, became much easier? Maybe engineering is just prompting a machine to build the code, or a designer having an understanding of what is appealing to people, and they can automate these other things. Do you think there's a case where maybe these names also disappear, product manager, designer, engineer, and there is a role? So
100%.
Designer? Sorry.
Yeah. I think the name you're looking for is like a smart, curious, and hungry person is going to be able to do whatever they want to do.
Yes, I think so, because to make it actionable, right, that would mean for people, for an engineer, a designer, a product manager, to actually not specialize as much as they did, right? Like, because for the last 10 years, the best bet for your career was to specialize in some tiny thing and get really, really good at a very, very small thing, right? Do you think now people should actually spend their next 5 years to generalize, that then in 5 years they can fill something like this?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, not generalize in the sense that you're an amazing HR person and a developer. That doesn't make so much sense, but generalize within building amazing products. 100%. I'm a huge believer of the end-to-end full stack product manager. And that's also how we organize ourselves here at airfocus. A product manager, when the strategy group decides we're going to go and invest in this opportunity, and then a product manager takes over and then owns the whole thing from there to when it's launched, including taking over product marketing responsibilities towards the end, and then measuring success and eventually killing the thing again. It's your child then.
Amazing. Malte, we are running out of time. I know you have a hard cut, so I would like to wrap up. That's it for today's episode. Malte, thank you so much for sharing your journey and also your wisdom. To all our listeners, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back soon. Thank you. Bye.